Aquarius. Before you scroll away, listen carefully. If your life didn't collapse loudly, but somehow feels completely different, now this message is for you. Nothing dramatic happened. No big goodbye. No clear ending. And yet you can feel it. Something quietly closed. Not because you failed, but because you outgrew who you were. If this is, pause for a moment and comment one sentence below. I accept this new season. Because what ended wasn't your path. It was the version of you that couldn't go any further. And in the next few moments, you're about to understand why this ending had to happen and what kind of season you're actually stepping into now. Stay with me. Aquarius, I want you to stay right here with me for a moment. Not as a listener, but as yourself, as the one person this is meant for. Because what ended in your life didn't ask for permission. It didn't make noise. It didn't leave a trail anyone else could follow. It just softened, faded. Like a light being turned down slowly in a room you'd been sitting in for years. You might still walk through the same days, talk to the same people, hold the same routines, and yet, something inside you stopped responding the way it used to. That's how it happens for you. Not with explosions, but with distance. You didn't wake up one morning and decide to change. You woke up one morning and realized you already had. What once felt meaningful started to feel heavy. What once made sense began to feel slightly off. Not wrong, just no longer yours, and that can be confusing. Because nothing looks broken from the outside, but inside, you can feel the space where something used to live. Aquarius, that space isn't emptiness. It's accuracy. It's your system saying, this version of life has taken you as far as it can. You didn't fail it, you completed it. And I know, you probably didn't get closure, no final words, no clean ending, no moment where everything clicked and felt resolved. Just a quiet knowing that you couldn't keep showing up the same way anymore. That kind of ending can feel lonely, because no one else sees it happen. But it's also deeply intelligent, because it means your awareness moved first. You stopped betraying yourself in small ways. You stopped agreeing to things your body no longer consented to. You stopped explaining who you are to people who stopped listening. And when you do that, life responds. Not by taking things away to hurt you, but by clearing space. You might have noticed, some connections loosened without conflict. Some plans dissolved without drama. Some desires simply went quiet. That wasn't loss. That was refinement. Your frequency changed, and what couldn't rise with you had to fall away. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling this. There is nothing broken because you're grieving something that didn't collapse loudly. Quiet endings still deserve respect. So if you've been wondering why everything feels unfamiliar lately, even when nothing looks different, it's because you're no longer living from the same internal place. You crossed a line most people never notice crossing. The moment where you stop surviving your life and start listening to it. Take a breath here, let that land. Because what's forming now isn't chaos, it's alignment finding its shape. And in a moment, you'll start to see why this subtle ending was actually the first signal that something very specific and very intentional has already begun to rearrange itself around you. Aquarius, stay with me. Let's slow this moment down together. Because the shift you felt didn't come from effort. It came from exhaustion. The kind that settles in when you realize you can't keep leaving yourself behind just to keep the peace. There was a moment, maybe quiet, maybe ordinary, when you stopped asking, is this enough for them, and started asking, why does this feel wrong to me? You didn't announce it. You didn't make a promise to change. You just stopped betraying yourself in small ways. You stopped reaching for approval that never really filled you. You stopped explaining your heart to rooms that felt closed. You stopped shrinking your thoughts just to stay connected. And that is when things began to fall apart. Not because you did something wrong, but because you finally did something honest. When you come back to yourself, life has to rearrange. It always does. Anything built on the version of you that was overgiving, overperforming, overadapting cannot stay standing when you return to your center. That can feel unsettling, because the collapse doesn't look dramatic. It looks like confusion. Like plans losing momentum. Like relationships feeling slightly off without a clear reason. You may have wondered, why now? Why everything at once? Why when I finally feel clearer inside? But clarity has a consequence. It exposes misalignment. You didn't destroy anything, you revealed it. Aquarius, you are ruled by awareness, by insight, by the ability to see systems as they truly are. So when you stopped numbing yourself, when you stopped operating on autopilot, your entire internal system recalibrated. That recalibration sent a signal. This is no longer who I am. This is no longer how I move. This is no longer what I accept. And life listened. Not gently, at first, but accurately. Things that relied on the old version of you lost their grip. Not as punishment, but as correction. I know it may have felt like you were losing ground. Like stability slipped away right when you needed it most. But what you were actually losing was the weight of carrying a life that no longer fit. There is a strange grief that comes with this phase. Grieving roles you played well. Grieving identities that kept you safe. Grieving versions of yourself that got you through hard seasons. Honor that grief. It means you grew, because you cannot come back to yourself and keep living the same life. It doesn't work that way. Recalibration is quiet, but it is precise. It adjusts your relationships, your pace, your tolerance for noise, your definition of success, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to notice something else. A subtle relief, less internal resistance, more space in your chest, a sense that even though things are uncertain, they are no longer false. Take a breath here, because what's unfolding now is not about rebuilding what fell apart. It's about allowing your life to reorganize around who you truly are without force, without explanation, without apology. And as that organization continues, you may start to notice how effortlessly certain doors remain open while others close themselves. Not loudly, not suddenly, just clearly. And that clarity is guiding you toward a very different kind of stability, one that doesn't ask you to leave yourself behind anymore. Aquarius. Let me talk to you like I would if we were sitting across from each other. Late at night, lights low. Nothing to prove. 3 months ago, you were not this person. And I don't mean that in a dramatic way. I mean it in the quietest way possible. Back then, you were still seeing yourself through old lenses, old expectations, old definitions of who you had to be in order to belong. You didn't just change habits. You didn't just shift routines. You changed the way you stand inside your own mind. And that kind of change doesn't announce itself. Aquarius never transforms loudly. You don't burn bridges for attention. You don't reinvent yourself on display. You evolve internally first. It happens in the moments no one witnesses, the thoughts you no longer entertain, the questions you stop answering for others, the standards you quietly raise without explaining why. You began to see yourself differently, not better than anyone, just more clearly. And once that happens, everything else feels delayed. Because the world still responds to the old version of you. People still project outdated expectations. Situations still assume you will show up the same way. That gap can feel uncomfortable, like you're ahead of your own life, like you've moved on before the scenery changed. But that's how identity works. Identity always shifts before recognition. Always. You don't get applause when your self-perception evolves. You get silence, confusion, a strange sense of being unseen and deeply certain at the same time. Have you felt that? That calm confidence mixed with loneliness, that knowing you're no longer who you were even if no one else seems to notice yet. That's not isolation, that's incubation. You are in a phase where your inner world has already updated, but the outer world is still catching the signal. And Aquarius, that can test your patience. Because you see the future version of yourself clearly, you feel it in your body, in your decisions, in what you will no longer tolerate, yet you're still standing in rooms that reflect the past. This is where many people panic. They rush, they explain, they force visibility. You didn't. You stayed steady. You allowed the new identity to settle into your nervous system, to become real before it became visible. That takes maturity. That takes trust. And even on the days you doubted yourself, you didn't go back. You didn't abandon the clarity you earned. That's important. Because identity is not a performance, it's a frequency. And frequency doesn't need to be announced, it's felt. Slowly, people will respond differently to you. Without knowing why, opportunities will shift tone. Without explanation. Not because you demanded recognition, but because you became undeniable. Take a breath here. You are not behind. You are early. And the part of you that changed in silence is the same part that will eventually lead without noise. As you settle into this awareness, you may begin to notice how naturally certain paths feel closer now, how your presence carries more weight with less effort. Not because you're trying to be seen, but because you finally see yourself. And when that alignment deepens, the world has no choice but to reorganize around it. Aquarius, let me bring you a little closer into this moment, because something subtle has been happening around you. And I want you to feel it, not analyze it. Lately, things haven't required the same effort. Have you noticed that? Doors opening without you pushing, conversations flowing without you preparing, moments arriving that feel strangely well-timed. Not perfect, just right. You're finding yourself in rooms you didn't plan to enter. Not because you chased them, but because you showed up as yourself, and somehow, the room adjusted. You're meeting people you weren't actively searching for. People who don't need you to explain your depth. People who don't rush your thoughts. People who listen without trying to fix you. And when you leave those conversations, you don't feel drained. You feel settled. That's important. Because for most of your life, connection required effort, adjustment, translation. You had to bend your ideas, slow your mind, tone down your insights so others could keep up. But now, something has shifted. The invitations arriving in your life feel different. They don't demand performance. They don't require you to become smaller or louder. They simply recognize you. And that recognition feels calm. This isn't luck. It's resonance. This is what happens when you stop forcing outcomes and start matching frequencies. When you no longer move from urgency. When you no longer chase validation disguised as opportunity. When you trust that alignment doesn't need persuasion. Aquarius, you didn't chase this season. You tuned into it. You adjusted your inner dial. And the signal changed. That's why things are lining up quietly. Without pressure. Without announcement. You might still question it sometimes. Wonder if you're doing enough. If you should be moving faster. If ease means you're missing something. But ease is not absence of purpose. It's evidence of alignment. What's finding you now is responding to who you are, not who you were trying to be. And that can feel unfamiliar. Because you're used to effort equaling worth. Used to struggle meaning progress. Used to believing that if it isn't hard, it isn't real. But Aquarius, the season you're in doesn't require force. It requires presence. You're not here to convince anyone anymore. You're here to recognize what recognizes you. Notice how your body responds now. How certain spaces feel lighter. How certain paths feel quieter but clearer. Those sensations are not random. They are guidance without noise. And you don't need to explain them. Not to anyone. Some people will wonder how you got here. How things seem to fall into place for you. Why you look more grounded without trying. You don't owe them a story. You know what shifted. You stopped chasing the future and allowed it to meet you where you are. Take a breath here. Let that settle. Because as you continue moving this way, trusting alignment over effort, you may begin to notice that your presence itself starts to open doors. Not because you knock, but because you belong. And when belonging becomes your baseline, life has a way of arranging itself so that every step forward feels less like a push and more like a quiet arrival. Aquarius, let me speak to you gently here. Because this part matters more than you might realize. You've spent most of your life being the strong one. The one people lean on without asking first. The one who listens longer than they speak. The one who stays composed even when things feel heavy inside. You learned early how to hold space. How to think clearly when others couldn't. How to steady the room without being seen. And for a long time, that role made sense. It gave you purpose. It gave you a place. But lately, something feels different. Not wrong, just unfamiliar. You're no longer surrounded by people who need to be carried. You're noticing the shift, aren't you? The conversations feel more balanced. The support feels mutual. The energy doesn't drain you the way it used to. And part of you is relieved. Quietly relieved. Another part feels uneasy. Because when you've always been the helper, being helped can feel disorienting. Like you've lost your footing. Like you don't quite know where to place your hands anymore. You might catch yourself wanting to step back into the old role. To offer solutions before anyone asks. To hold things together even when no one expects you to. That instinct is familiar. But this season isn't asking for that version of you. This season is asking you to receive. Not dramatically. Not helplessly. Just honestly. To allow someone to show up without you managing the outcome. To let a conversation support you without redirecting it. To accept care without earning it first. And I know that's not easy. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that your value came from what you provided. From how useful you were. From how much you could handle. But usefulness is not the same as worth, and strength does not mean solitude. Aquarius, you don't have to be needed to be valued. The people entering your life now aren't here to take from you. They're here because they can stand with you. They see your mind, your steadiness, your depth. And they don't feel threatened by it. They don't ask you to shrink or overfunction. They simply meet you. And that kind of support can feel almost too quiet at first. Like something is missing. But what's missing is the exhaustion. You're not losing your identity. You're shedding a role that was never meant to be permanent. Take a breath here. Let your shoulders soften. It's okay to rest in this. It's okay to let the weight shift. It's okay to need less from yourself. Because this phase of your life isn't about how much you can hold. It's about how deeply you can be held. And as you allow that support to settle in, as you stop bracing for collapse that never comes, you may begin to notice something else. A new steadiness. A quieter confidence. A sense that you don't have to prove your place anymore. That feeling is not weakness. It's grounding. And from that grounded place, something important begins to take shape. Not through effort, not through overgiving, but through presence. And when you stand there, supported and whole, you'll start to feel how naturally your energy reorganizes itself. How your focus sharpens. How your sense of direction becomes clearer. Without urgency. Without force. Just a calm knowing. that you don't have to carry everything forward alone anymore. Aquarius, let me sit with you right here for a moment, because this part touches something quieter, something deeply yours. What you've been focused on lately isn't random, even if it feels scattered, even if you haven't fully named it yet. There's a reason your attention has shifted, a reason certain ideas won't leave you alone, a reason you keep circling back to the same work, the same themes, the same questions. This isn't distraction, it's recognition. What you're building now may not look impressive from the outside. It may not fit neatly into anyone else's expectations. It may not come with applause or immediate validation, and that's exactly why it matters. You're no longer working to be seen. You're working to be aligned. For the first time in a long while, your effort isn't about proving your intelligence, or justifying your worth, or staying ahead of judgment. It's about honesty. You're choosing work that feels true even when it feels slow, even when it feels lonely, even when no one is watching yet. And that choice is changing everything. Aquarius, you were never meant to follow a borrowed timeline. Your rhythm has always been different. You move when the internal signal is clear, not when the world tells you it's time. So if you've questioned yourself lately, wondering why your path doesn't resemble anyone else's, why your progress feels internal before it feels visible, why your goals feel quieter but heavier with meaning, this is why. You're building from identity now, not ambition alone. What you're working on is an extension of who you're becoming, not who you used to be, not who you were expected to remain, and that makes it powerful. Truth has a different kind of momentum. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need convincing. It gathers strength by being consistent, day after day, choice after choice, even when no one is clapping. You may not see the full impact yet, but you can feel it. That subtle sense of rightness, that quiet confidence when you think about continuing, that calm resolve that tells you, I can stay with this. That feeling is rare, and it's worth protecting. Because work that comes from truth changes you before it changes your life. It sharpens your focus. It refines your standards. It teaches you patience without bitterness. And slowly, almost without effort, it begins to attract the right kind of attention. Not noise, not pressure, but recognition that feels respectful. You're not here to rush the process. You're here to stay rooted in it. So if doubt creeps in, and it will remember this, you're no longer asking, will this impress them? You're asking, can I live with this being mine? That question will never lead you wrong. Take a breath here. Let that land in your body. Because as you continue honoring this work, showing up for it, quietly, consistently, without needing external permission, you'll start to notice how naturally your direction sharpens. How your energy stops leaking. How your confidence becomes less reactive and more grounded. And from that grounded place, movement begins to happen. Not forced, not frantic, just steady, intentional. Like something aligning itself because it finally recognizes where it belongs. Aquarius, come a little closer with me now. This part is softer, but it carries weight. You may have noticed something changing in how you move through the world. You're speaking less, explaining less, offering fewer updates about what you're thinking or planning. And for once, it doesn't feel like withdrawal. It feels intentional. This season doesn't ask you to announce yourself. It asks you to listen, to observe, to move with clarity instead of commentary. You're learning something important. Not everything needs to be shared while it's still forming. For most of your life, you explained yourself to be understood. You filled in the gaps for others, translated your ideas, softened your intentions so they would land gently. But now, something inside you knows better. Not everyone needs access to your process, not because they are unworthy, but because some things need quiet to take shape. You've probably felt it. That subtle pull to keep certain thoughts to yourself, to work in silence, to let your actions speak when they're ready. This isn't secrecy, it's discernment. You're no longer leaking energy by over-explaining. You're no longer negotiating your vision in public. You're no longer asking for permission before you move. And that creates a different kind of power. Quiet power. When you stop narrating your journey, your focus sharpens, your momentum steadies, your intuition speaks louder. You move differently when you're not waiting for feedback. You finish things. You follow through. You trust your timing. And yes, some people may feel confused by your silence. They might wonder what you're up to. They might feel the distance. They might reach for answers you're no longer offering. But Aquarius, your responsibility is not to manage their curiosity. Your responsibility is to protect your clarity, because your energy is cleaner now, less fragmented, less reactive. You're not withholding to create mystery. You're allowing things to be real before they are revealed, and that matters. Work done quietly carries integrity. Decisions made privately carry confidence. Growth that happens without an audience tends to last. You don't need to convince anyone of what you're becoming. You don't need witnesses to validate your movement. The results will speak when the timing is right. Until then, silence is not absence, it's preparation. You may notice how calm you feel when you stop explaining. How grounded your choices feel when they're not influenced by outside opinion. How much energy returns to you when it's no longer spent on justification. That calm is a signal. It tells you you're moving in alignment. It tells you you're listening to yourself. It tells you you're no longer rushing to be seen. Take a breath here. Let the quiet hold you. Because this way of moving steady, intentional, unannounced is teaching you something deeper about trust. Trust in your vision. Trust in your timing. Trust in what's unfolding even when no one else can see it yet. And as you continue like this, finishing first, speaking later, allowing your work and presence to mature in peace, you may begin to feel a shift in how the world responds to you. Less resistance, more respect. Fewer questions, more openings. Not because you demanded attention, but because you arrived fully formed. And when you move from that place, there's no need to explain. There's only motion. Aquarius. Stay here with me for a little while longer. This is not an ending. It is a settling. You are not carrying your old identity forward. You can feel that now, not as a decision, but as a release. The version of you who survived the confusion, the moments where nothing made sense, the quiet collapses no one saw, the nights where you questioned everything but kept going anyway. That version did its job. It protected you. It endured. It held the line when things felt unstable. And because of that, there is space now. Space for this you. You may notice how different it feels to stand here. There is less urgency in your chest. Less need to explain who you are. Less attachment to outcomes that once felt essential. This new season does not arrive with noise. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't rush to be recognized. It settles into your body first. You move more slowly now, more deliberately, not because you're unsure, but because you're precise. You're not interested in repeating old patterns just to feel productive. You're not interested in proving your resilience anymore. You already know what you can survive. What matters now is how you live, and that is a powerful shift. Aquarius doesn't need permission to lead. You never did. Your leadership has always been quiet, rooted in clarity, in foresight, in the ability to see what others can't yet imagine. But before, you carried that vision alone. You questioned it. You diluted it. You waited for confirmation. You're not waiting anymore. As you move toward 2026, you're not dragging the past behind you. You're not negotiating with old versions of yourself. You're not explaining why you've changed. You're simply arriving as you are. And that arrival carries weight. People will feel it before they understand it. They'll sense your steadiness, your calm authority, the way you don't rush to fill silence. You won't need to announce what you're becoming. Your presence will speak for you. This season may surprise you, not because it's overwhelming, but because it feels so right. Opportunities will meet you where you stand, not because you chased them, but because you are ready to hold them. You may look back at the person you were and feel a quiet gratitude, not because you want to return there, but because you understand why it took that version of you to make this one possible. Take a breath here. Let that gratitude move through you. You didn't expect this season. You didn't plan it. You didn't force it. But you were ready for it. Ready to live without constant self-negotiation. Ready to lead without asking permission. Ready to build a life that reflects who you are now, not who you had to be to survive. As you stand on the edge of what's forming, notice how calm you feel. That calm is not emptiness. It's confidence that no longer needs to shout. And as you carry that calm forward, day by day, choice by choice, you'll begin to recognize something beautiful. This isn't a new life you're stepping into. It's the first time your life is finally stepping into you. Aquarius, before you leave, stay with me for this final breath. Because if this story found you tonight, it wasn't random. It never is for you. You didn't come here looking for answers. You came here because something inside you was already awake, listening, remembering. And maybe the most surprising part of this entire journey is not how much has changed, but how calm you feel standing where you are now. No chaos, no urgency, just a quiet recognition. This is me. This is where I belong. If this message touched something real in you, do one small thing before you go. Leave a comment and write, "I trust this season, not for me, for yourself," so your words can anchor what your heart already knows. And if you're part of this Aquarius circle, if these late-night conversations feel like home, subscribe. Stay connected, because you're not walking this path alone anymore. There are more messages coming, more clarity, more light. This journey doesn't end here. It's only changing shape. So take this calm with you. Let it guide your next step. Let it soften your doubts. Let it remind you that you don't have to rush becoming who you already are. Trust yourself, trust the timing. And when the next message arrives, you'll know exactly why it's meant for you. Until then, rest easy, Aquarius. You're exactly where you need to be.